So now I'm going to talk about how we can add some more interesting fonts to our web pages. As you may have seen already, the font list is not that exciting, and a couple of ways that you may have come across the font list. One is probably through the page properties, and right here where it says page font. If I look at the list here, there are not that many fonts to choose from, and I don't know if it's already come across in another video or the book, but I'll just quickly explain why the fonts come in these groups. That's because the way a normal font works is it needs to be on the user who's viewing your web page. It needs to be on their computer for it to be able to work. So the idea is first list the most common types of fonts. So most computers have these fonts. So I'm assuming or hoping that you would have Impact. But if you don't have Impact, then the browser is going to look on the computer for the next font on this list. And if you don't have that one, then it's going to look for the next font on this list. So that's why typically fonts on websites have been a little bit limited, because we haven't been embedding the fonts with the web page. It's not something that's there like an image or the text that you add. It's something that relies on the computer that is viewing the web page on the fonts that are listed in their computer. So now with Adobe, there's a new way though that we can add fonts, so we can get kind of like a little bit more expansive list and start to be able to design the text on our page to match many of the other elements on our page. And I'm going to talk about the text. We're not going to add the fonts through the CSS page properties window because Dreamweaver adds a lot of extra code that I think is a little confusing, so we're not going to do it that way. I'm going to actually use this as an opportunity to talk about another panel here in Dreamweaver. The way that I've been working in Dreamweaver, I've just been showing you the Files panel. Now there's another panel here called CSS Designer, and when I click on that, I should see up at the top my sources, Media Global, Selectors. So selectors are all of these different HTML tags that we've written CSS rules for, such as the H1. And if I have my code view open, you'll notice if I switch in my code view to H3, it's going to highlight the H3 under my selector. I also have a rule for my image. It's going to highlight that. So any one of the CSS rules we've already written will show up here in the selector. I could also add more CSS rules here through the panel, but we haven't done that. What I've had you do is just do it directly in the code view. So we're going to use these panels, though, to be able to add the different fonts. If you look down here in the Properties panel, there are a couple of different tabs. The first one is Layout. And this is stuff we haven't really gotten into yet. We will be talking about it, but let's see, I think there is a window here for margin. So I showed you how to add the margin by going into the code view. You could actually also change your margins for whichever one of these tags that you're selected on. You could change the margin right down here. And there are all different kinds of other attributes, but we'll just deal with these very slowly. The one that we're interested in is the text property. So what I'm going to do is I can either click in my code view to be in the area of my H1, and it's going to choose that selector for me, or I could go and choose it directly right here from the selector. So now I'm on H3, but I'm going to choose H1. And this is incidentally where I could go and I could set the color for my text if I want, or I could do it directly in the code. What we're looking at right now is the font family. I'm going to click where it says default font, and I see the same list that I saw under page properties, and I'm going to go to where it says manage fonts. And this is going to bring me to a window of Adobe Edge web fonts, and there are several video tutorials. You might have gotten one as soon as you switched over to your properties that popped up, and I actually recommend that you might want to watch some of these videos to fully understand how the Adobe Edge web fonts work. First, if I'm looking for a particular font, I can search for it here. If not, I can pick one of the categories on the side, and I can scroll through and pick a font from this way. In another video, I'm going to talk about the different groupings of these fonts. Some are very decorative. This would not be good text font to use for a large paragraph. Others are going to be better for headings. Others will be better for paragraphs, and they have different styles. So we have a group here. And once I find a font that I like, I could choose this one, for example. I just get a little check mark, and it's now been added to my font list. I can choose that one. And you can go along as you like and stay kind of away from the cursive ones for large paragraphs of text. You could use these for headings. I'll take something like this, and then I'm going to click Done. So now when I go back over to where it says Font Family, I have them listed here. And I'm going to choose this one, Muli. And now my heading 1 takes on the different font. If you don't see it, switch over here to Live View. You might, if you're in Design, it's not going to show it to me. So I can switch over to Live View, and that's going to show it to me. And now I'll switch back to Design View so we can edit over here if we want. Let's look at what Dreamweaver added. First of all, over here in my H1 tag, I still see my margin bottom 0px that I added before. It now says Font Family Muli. And this particular font comes with a couple of other attributes. Font style is just normal, and the font weight is 300, which is kind of like a standard weight. That's like how bold is it. But there's another part that was added for you, and this is the reason that I am having you specifically add these WebedgeFonts through this panel, is because when you do it through this panel, this very important part of code has been added to your web page. And that is right after my style tag. I don't know why my page keeps jumping. Right after my style tag, where has it gone? Sorry. Right after my style tag, my computer's just become possessed. 1 second, please. I don't know why. Maybe if I just switch purely to code view, I can get it to control. It keeps jumping on its own. Here we can see it now. Right after the style tag, it has added some scripts. And this is JavaScript, and basically what it's saying to the browser is go to this web address, and that's where you're going to be able to find this font Muli. And so, I'm going to switch back over. This is very important. It will not work without this, but Dreamweaver added it for me. So let's go and do another one. I'm going to select my H3 from the selectors panel, and again, if for some reason I can't find my selectors panel, I could also just click right into my H3 rule here. And I'm going to make sure I'm on the T for text and go to Font Family and choose a different one. So either I could go back to Manage Fonts and I could choose a different one, or I could choose the ones I picked already from the WebEdge ones. If you don't want to use WebedgeFonts and you're just using these guys, you don't have to worry about that script. And you can just go and add the fonts directly in the code view. But I want to use the WebEdge ones. So for my heading 2, I'm going to grab a different one. And now let's look over here in the code and see what it's added. Sorry, I meant to say heading 3. My heading 3, I now have the font family, the font style, which is just normal, and the font weight. So this particular one, it came with a slightly higher weight, but I could always go and change that if I wanted to. And let's look down here. It has now added another little blip of code where it now says default, and it has added, it's split between 2 lines, but it's added the name of this new font here. So I didn't have to do it. Again, this is really important, and if you don't have this here, then it's not going to work. Let's switch over to the live view, and now I can see the effect, as soon as I switch over, of these 2 different fonts. And I don't particularly like that second font. I actually probably would keep the second font, my H3, the same as my H1. But this is really just for the sake of example. Okay, so switching back over. So I'll put some links up for other tutorials on watching WebedgeFonts, and I do recommend looking a little bit more into those. But this is definitely the way that you can bring your page to look a little bit beyond just the standard web page, is by adding the WebedgeFonts and applying them to your different HTML tags that you're writing rules for, such as the H1, H3, and then you can also apply it to the paragraph tag as well if you want to be able to apply a different type of font to your paragraph.